Hello, this is MrChabry, and today we're going to be talking about the Psychic-type Pokemon that you can find in Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. And the very first one that we're going to look at is actually the final form of Fennekin, and that's going to be Delphox. So if you're wanting a Psychic-type that you can get pretty early on, Delphox might be a good choice. This thing has 104 speed, which means it's pretty good speed-wise. Special defense at 100 is pretty good too. And 114 special attack. That is a good special attack stat. And it does get some pretty cool moves. Of course, Fire Blast and Psychic. But you also throw Grass Knot on that thing for coverage. You can also throw Dazzling Gleam for coverage, and that helps you out against, say, opposing Dark types. And this one also gets the move Mystical Fire, which is a pretty cool move. I think in this generation it was a unique move to Delphox, and it lowers the special attack of the opponent. So a pretty good all-around Pokemon. Fire Psychic is a cool typing. You can look at all those resistances. Just keep in mind that you do have a few things that you're weak to, but it is a good type, and this thing does have good coverage, and it has good stats to make use of that. Just keep in mind that it's also, on the physical side, pretty frail. So, as long as you keep that in mind, I think Delphox would be a great Psychic type for your team. Next up is Gardevoir. Now, Gardevoir is Psychic and Fairy. It gains the Fairy typing, which is really good type combination. You get a lot of good moves. And you can see here that this thing has great special attack at 125, good special defense at 115, and okay speed at 80. It's not the fastest thing. It is also kind of the same problem with Delphox, weak on the physical side, but you also have access to a Mega form in this generation. You can see here, this thing gets a great attack stat at 165, and of course most of your Fairy, your Psychic type moves that you're going to want to use are going to be special attack. So this thing can hit things so hard, and it can take a lot of hits. 135 special defense is great, and it does get an increase in speed, which is something that it really needs. So this is all around a great Pokemon, a great Mega form, and even a pretty good Pokemon. If you find that next to Psychic, you also might want a Fairy type for your team. Gallade, on the other hand, instead of having that Fairy type, you're going to have Fighting type. And instead of focusing on special attack, this one focuses on attack. So 125 attack is pretty good. Has the same speed stat as Gardevoir, same special defense stat as Gardevoir. Just keep in mind the only difference is that switching of special attack to attack. And Psychic Fighting is a cool typing as well. Now, of course, it has a Mega, but if you're doing X and Y, you're not going to see this thing because this is for Oris. But you can see it does get great stats on top of its already decent stats. So Gallade is a great Psychic type Pokemon if you find that. Fighting type is also needed. Alakazam, now this is the OG Psychic type of choice for people's in-game team. And that's because it is a great Pokemon and it still holds up today. 120 speed, that is a great speed stat. You're outspeeding a lot of things. You still have some good special bulk at 95. And 135, which is a great special attack stat. Now, this thing is pure Psychic rather than having a secondary typing, so keep that in mind. And you do also have the Mega form. You can see here, 175. This thing just rips through everything. And 150 speed. It outspeeds a lot of things. Keep in mind, with the other Psychic types that we saw, this one's frail on the physical side. But yeah, Alakazam is another great choice. So far, we've seen nothing but great choices for Psychic types. And another thing about Alakazam and Gardevoir, for that matter, we could actually go back and look at Gardevoir in this regard, is that it gets a good move pool. Psychic, Shadow Ball, Focus Blast. This one also gets Dazzling Gleam. Gardevoir also gets Dazzling Gleam. So you can see great moves. Actually, Gardevoir also gets Moonblast, which is the best special Psychic move. You can see that Alakazam also gets some good things. So far, great Psychic types. But now we're going to get to some that might not be as useful on your team. Meowstic has two forms, the male and female form, and you can see here that the difference is in terms of their strategy. You see, the male form is considered more of a utility set, and that's because of its move pool. And then its ability, Prankster. Now, Meowstic female, it gets competitive, which it usually ends up being used more offensively. Otherwise, their stats are pretty much the same. And I don't know if their move pool, it doesn't make sense if their move pool is different. So I think it's just their ability that kind of makes it that sort of thing. But anyway, female Meowstic is the more offensive one usually. You can see 104 speed is pretty good. But that's pretty much it. This thing is outclassed by the first 4 psychic types that we looked at. So I think if you're making an in-game team and you find you need a psychic type, Meowstic might be one that, you know, if you want to use it, you might be able to get away with it. But you can see here that it is already outclassed by other things that you would find early on in the game. The next psychic type is unfortunately also easily outclassed. That is Medicham. Now you can see Medicham here has the same typing as Gallade, but stats-wise, it leaves a lot to be wanted. It is not very powerful. You have to have pure power to even be able to do anything. And on top of that, your bulk is pretty dismal. Now, you do have a Mega Form. But you can see here, the Mega Form stats, they don't really feel on par with other Mega Pokemon. So I think Medicham is one that you could make use. Just keep in mind that it is heavily outclassed by Gallade. Gallade can do everything that Medicham can, but better. So I think if you're deciding between the two, Gallade might be better. But you could make this work as kind of a challenge run. Now, Hoopa is a psychic type that you're not really going to be able to get access to because it is a event Pokemon. Now, I will go ahead and point out some of the stat things. You can see it has great stats across the board. Good, good special bulk, good special attack. It is slower. It is weaker on the defense side. It does have some good attack. Psychic Ghost is a cool typing, and once you turn into the Unbound form, you can see it switches Ghost for Dark, and it gets a boost in those stats. So, a really good Pokemon. It's just, this is a Pokemon that you're not going to have access to in your in-game team. Grumpig is a Psychic Pokemon that is easily outclassed. I think it's funny that, you know, early on they throw some of the best Psychic-type Pokemon in the decks, and now we get to Grumpig, which is all around mediocre. Special Defense is its best stat. It's not the fastest thing, and it's got pretty sad special attack. This thing is more in terms of the idea of maybe a more bulky Psychic type, and you see here Substitute Calm Mind, more bulky-minded. Offensive Utility, trying to spread Taunt or a Thunder Wave, so you can see that it's not used as often as a hard-hitting Pokemon. So this is one that I would probably skip or throw it on like a challenge run. But so far we've already seen Psychics that outclass Grumpig. Malamar is actually a cool Pokemon. I do respect what this Pokemon has going for it. And that is because what this Pokemon does that is pretty cool is... first off, it has the contrary ability, which means even though you know, its stats are not that great, you can run something like Superpower, and that's going to boost your attack and defense. So the idea is you throw Superpower, use Contrary to boost this up. Now keep in mind you aren't the fastest thing at 73, and that's not even slow enough to necessarily do well with a Trick Room. So just keep that in mind if you're running this thing, that stats-wise it is kind of disappointing. And it is a Pokemon that kind of needs a setup, a turn of setup. So you need to be able to go Superpower to even do anything and have that Contrary activate. And I think there's other moves that might be able to, you know, raise your stats like that. But superpower is the main one that people go for, and you know, it makes sense because it can actually do some work. So superpower, I would say, if you run this thing, make sure you have superpower on it. Make sure that you have superpower in order to get your boost that you need. Lunatone, this thing is outclassed. Rock Psychic is not really the best typing. I mean, you have some good resist, but you're actually weak to more things. Stats-wise, special attack is your best stat. It's 95. But everything else doesn't necessarily help you out in taking advantage of that special attack. So I think, honestly, this is one that if you want to do like a challenge run, maybe use it, but otherwise just skip it. I do have to point out, it does get some pretty cool moves like Psychic, Earth Power, Ice Beam, Moonblast. You get a lot of decent moves. Charge Beam, Grass Knot for coverage. I think I already said Ice Beam. But yeah, you get some good moves. It's just you don't have the stats to back up that move pool. You're slow, you're frail, you don't really hit things very hard. So Lunatone is one that I would probably skip. Now, on the other hand, Solrock is also a Pokemon that should probably be skipped because it has a lot of the same problems as Lunatone. The only difference is you're not focusing on that special side so much, and you're focusing more on that physical side. And when it comes to physical moves, there's not that many great physical moves that you can take advantage of with your Solrock. You can look here and see that most of the moves are going to be special attack. Earthquake, that might work, but you can see there's not really a great physical Psychic type move. And if you're wanting to run this as a Psychic type, you would actually want that. Zen Headbutt is really your best bet, but you know, it's outclassed by, say, a special focused Psychic type. So I think this is another Pokemon to skip. I feel like this one is even lower than Lunatone. If it's crazy, you could say something like that. But yeah, it's pretty sad Pokemon, not going to be able to do much on your team. Starmie, now this is a good Psychic type Pokemon. It is pretty fast, 115. Has decent special attack, 100. And it, you know, surprisingly can take a few hits, 85 in defense and special defense, if you want to focus it that way. Usually people focus it on a more all-out offensive. You can see here, competitive-wise, you can run a utility set, which actually would be pretty decent. But yeah, offensive is what I would go to if you're wanting to run this as an in-game team. Analytic, I wouldn't really worry about that, using that as an ability. I think Natural Cure is the best ability for this Pokemon. Illuminate in this generation doesn't, no competitive use. It doesn't do anything. I think in the overworld, it actually just makes it where wild Pokemon are more likely to come out after you. So yeah, I would go Natural Cure. But yeah, this thing gets a good move pool. Scald, Psyshock is for that set. I would say Hydro Pump would also be good. Surf, Psychic, Thunderbolt. You get Ice Beam. You get Dazzling Gleam on this thing. So yeah, you do get a lot of great moves, a lot of great coverage, and good special attack, and good speed. This is a solid pick for a Psychic type Pokemon. Swoobat, I feel like this thing gets outclassed pretty easily. It does have good speed, 114, but I think that's pretty much it. 77 special attack is not great. You're very frail, not hitting things hard. Psychic Flying, you've got a lot of weaknesses you're going to have to deal with running this thing, so keep that in mind. You are fast, but you don't have great, a lot of great, outstanding moves that really work well with this low special attack stat. Psychic Air Slash is probably your best flying type coverage, and that's a pretty underwhelming move. U-turn to switch out. Shadow Ball for coverage. You can run a more defensive set, but you don't have much in terms of defense to live some of these hits. Signal Beam's also for coverage. Roost for survivability. You have some moves, but not enough great moves to really necessarily, you know, have this thing on your team. Its stats are pretty low. So I would say this is one that it's probably best to skip on your team. Espeon, now this is a good Psychic type Pokemon. You've got 110 speed, which is pretty good. 130 special attack. You can hit things decently hard. 95 special defense. If you notice, this is pretty similar to some of the early Psychic types we looked at, where they're focused on the special side and they're weaker on the physical side. Espeon is another one that is like that. And Espeon does get some good moves too. Psychic, Dazzling Gleam, and Shadow Ball. You can throw Morning Sun on this thing to get some survivability. So this is actually a good Psychic type Pokemon if you find that, you know, oh, you have an Eevee on your team and you need a Psychic type. Well, here's Espeon, something that can actually do pretty good on your team. Sigilyph, I feel like this is a Pokemon that's kind of outclassed. 97 speed is okay. 103 special attack is okay, but I mean, that's really it. It's not going to be the best Psychic type, and you know, in fact, we've already seen a lot that outclass this thing. But this thing, I do have to say, it is better than Swoobat. So, Psychic Flying, this is a better pick than Swoobat, where Swoobat has more speed. This has more bulk and more attacking power, and its speed's not the worst. So, it can actually do some work. You can throw Magic Guard as your ability, and you don't have to worry about being toxic or being burnt, or even weather hazards. Now, this does get some decent moves. Psychic, Heat Wave, Energy Ball, Dazzling Gleam. You can throw Shadow Ball on this thing. So you do get some decent moves with Sigilyph. I think it could work. I'm not going to say it's the best because we've already seen Pokemon that outclass this thing. But you could probably make it work, and it'll be a little bit tougher to make it work, though. Chime Echo, this thing is really outclassed. Its only good stat is 95 special attack, and that's it. It's slow, it's frail, it doesn't do much. This is a Pokemon that I would say is probably best to skip. I don't even remember what this Pokemon necessarily does well in Generation 3, the generation it's introduced in. I don't think it's just not a great Pokemon. It's so outclassed by so many things. And it's kind of sad because this is actually a pretty hard Pokemon to find in Generation 3, and then they gave it these kind of stats, so I don't know what they were thinking with that. They should have at least made it like maybe a bulkier Psychic type. I could see that, you know. But yeah, other than that, there's no reason to use this thing. It's just going to be tough to get it to do any work on your team. Mr. Mime, now stats-wise, this has some decent stats. It's got okay speed. It's got good special defense, and it's got okay special attack. So, like we saw with the other Psychic types, all special, no physical. This also has gained the Fairy typing in this generation, which gives it an immunity to Dragon, which is actually really, really good. So yeah, I think this would be a solid pick on your team. You can throw moves on it like Psychic, Dazzling Gleam for stab, Focus Blast for coverage. You could throw other moves on it, like Thunderbolt can fit pretty well on it. Energy Ball. I wouldn't worry about Fire Punch or any physical moves, because this thing has pretty bad physical attack. But you do have things like, you know, Icy Wind, and that could help slow down your opponent. It's got some good utility. Magical Leaf. I think some of these might be egg moves, though. But you do get some decent moves with this Pokemon. So I think this is one that you could make work, and it would actually do pretty well on your team. Reuniclus is also a pretty good Pokemon. Now, where have we seen, you know, pretty frail and fast Psychic types? This one is the slower, bulkier Psychic type. 110 HP is actually really good, and it's got the Overcoat ability and Magic Card, so you can use that. Regenerator is the better ability, but I think that's a hidden ability. But 125 special attack is great, and like all the other Psychic types really do have good move coverage. They always have Psychic, which is good. Most of the time they have something like Shadow Ball. They can throw in Signal Beam, Focus Blast. You also get things like Energy Ball in this thing. You could throw, not Ice Punch, but you could throw other things like Psy Shock if you want to hit things that have lower defense than special defense. But yeah, Shockwave for some coverage. So yeah, you get some good things with this Pokemon as well. Good moves. I would say Reuniclus is a really good pick for a Psychic type. Wobbuffet. Now, this is a Pokemon that is very gimmicky. The gimmickiness of Wobbuffet is it is got a lot of HP. And the only moves that you can really use on this thing is non-damaging moves. That being moves like Encore, Mirror Coat, Counter, Destiny Ball, and Safeguard. You don't get really moves like Psychic or anything like that. So the thing with this is you have to predict if you're going to get hit with a physical move and use Counter to do any damage, or a special move and use Mirror Coat to do damage. So yeah, this is a very gimmicky Pokemon. In competitive, it's very feared because it's easy to predict your opponent and knock things out, but as an in-game team Pokemon, it's just one that you should probably skip. Slowbro is a pretty cool Pokemon. It is, instead of focusing on offense and knocking things out, it's more focused on its defense and taking hits. It's a Water Psychic type, which is a pretty good type combination. Water types are always good. But you also get that 110 defense, which is good. 100 special attack's not that bad either, and 95 HP helps that defense. Special defense is at 80, but with that HP, it does have some survivability on that end. Keep in mind, this thing is slow, and it's in the name, Slowbro. If you put this thing on your team expecting to outspeed things, well, I'm sorry you misread this thing's name. But yeah, I'm not going to focus on the Mega, because that is an Oris-only, Oris-exclusive Pokemon. Just keep in mind, this thing has crazy defense. Oh my gosh. This is a very bulky Pokemon. But if you want to run this thing, I would suggest something like Scald, so you can burn the opponent, lower their physical attack prowess, and it makes them harder for them to knock you out. Ice Beam for coverage. Fire Blast is good coverage as well. A move like Slack Off, you can heal yourself up. So yeah, this is also a decent Pokemon. Just keep in mind, it's not focused that much on offense. It's more of a defensive Psychic type Pokemon. Slowking is pretty much the same as Slowbro. The only difference is, instead of that defense, you're coming in with great special defense. So that's really the only change. You do have some decent defense as well with that HP stat. Pretty much same moveset, everything. I'm not going to really say one is better than the other, just because the only difference is which of those defense stats have more of a focus, and it really is situational. Are you taking on a section of the game where there's a bunch of physical attackers or a bunch of special attackers? Depending on that, Slowking or Slowbro will be better for their respective situational areas. But yeah, other than that, Slowking is also a pretty good special type, a Psychic type Pokemon. Executor, now this is a Pokemon that was kind of the king of grass types in Generation 1, but it's kind of not as great anymore. You do have good special attack, and you do have some decent bulk with 95 and then 85 defense. And you actually have surprisingly good attack as well with 95, but your special defense is garbage, and your speed is garbage. So this is also a situational Pokemon. The grass Psychic type is not that good. That leaves you weak to so many things that you're going to come across very often. And move pool wise, you do get some good moves like Psychic. If you have Sunny Day and you have Chlorophyll, you can take advantage of that. And even if you don't have Chlorophyll, Harvest is also a good ability. Solar Beam's a good grass type move. I do think, yeah, Energy Ball, it gets Energy Ball. But I would say this thing is probably one that, if you're playing Generation 1, I could say, use it on your team. But here, it kind of doesn't do as well because it's slow. It doesn't want to get hit with very many moves because it's weak to so many moves. So I'd say this is more of a challenge. You could make it work, but it would be kind of a challenge. Next up is Jinx. Now, Jinx has the same setup as a lot of the Psychic types. Focus on the special, kind of leave out the physical. And you can see here, a special attack, 115. That is a good special attack. 95 speed's decent. 95 special defense is decent. Its HP is pretty low, so it's still not going to be the bulkiest Pokemon. And its defense is in the grass, in the dirt. It's just garbage defense. So if you get hit with anything physical, you're probably going to lose your Jinx. And Ice Psychic type is a pretty bad typing. I mean, on their own, you know, Ice is a good type, Psychic's a good type, but together, defensively, they have a lot of weaknesses. So I'd say, you know, stats-wise, this is a good Pokemon. Move-wise, you get some decent moves. Ice Beam, Psyshock, Psychic, Focus Blast. Lovely Kiss to put things to sleep. You can set up with Nasty Plot. I would also want to point out some pretty good moves, like Draining Kiss. You can heal yourself up. Energy Ball for coverage. So yeah, you do get some decent moves. You do also get Shadow Ball, I'm pretty sure, in a lot of these Psychic types. Yeah, Shadow Ball. Signal Beam as well. So yeah, you do get some good moves. You have some decent stats. I mean, you do have some garbage stats, but you do have some decent stats. It's just, I think the typing really hurts this Pokemon to the point where in this game, it's not going to be doing that much for you. So Jinx might be one that might be a skip, or it might be, if you want to challenge yourself, throw a Jinx on your team. Gothitelle, now this is a good Psychic type. It is pretty slow with 65 speed, but it has good bulk. It's got 110 special defense and the 95 defense. This thing actually does have some decent bulk to it. HP's a little bit low, but I think those defense stats are enough that it can actually take a few hits. And 95 special attack is pretty good too. And like other Psychic types, it gets a lot of really good moves like Psychic, Energy Ball, Dark Pulse. It gets Thunderbolt. Yeah, so a lot of good moves. That being said, you know, if it's up to you, if you want a faster or slower Psychic type, I do think faster Psychic types actually work better because you can actually hit things and not have to worry about getting hit with something that's super effective. But yeah, Gothitelle is a Psychic type that you might find a place on your team for. And the last Psychic type is one that you don't get until, I think, the post-game. But I do want to mention it because it is an enormous threat to, you know, to anyone that you're facing. This is probably the best Psychic type in the entire game, and that's going to be Mewtwo. Surprise, Mewtwo being the best Psychic type. Look at these stats on its base form. It's got good HP, good bulk, good special attack, even good attack. Most Psychic types don't even have good attack, and they usually focus one or the other, most of the time special. But yeah, look at that, 110. This thing can hit things decently hard. 154, that is a great attack stat, and 130 speed outspeeds a lot. And like other Psychic types, this thing has a great move pool. Now think about it, you can focus on physical or special with this thing and still do well. Not only that, depending on what version you have, you also have access to a Mega form. Mega Mewtwo Y is the Psychic, or is the special focused Mega. 194 special attack. That is an insane special attack stat. And it does have good physical attack as well. 150. Its defense gets reduced. But I think, you know, with how fast you are, 140, how good your special bulk is, and how hard you hit things, I think this reduction is worth it. You're not missing out on much with this happening here. So yeah, this is a great Pokemon. Now say you want your Mega Mewtwo to focus on this attack stat. Well, you have Mega Mewtwo X, who has 190 attack. And you still have good special attack with 154. And your defenses are a little bit better balanced with 100 in each. You're not as fast as Mega Y, but at 130, you're outspeeding pretty much almost everything in the game anyway. So this is the strongest Psychic type. Just keep in mind that it's pretty much post-game. So you're not going to use it on your team. You're going to be throwing it on your team when you're in the post-game stuff. And it's going to just demolish every opponent that you come across at that point. So That's all the Psychic types here in Pokemon X and Y. Which one are you going to use? Let me know in the comments. If I missed one, let me know that as well. I will see you in the next Pokemon video.